I hate this book. For like a little bit of context, I bought this book when I first moved here to where I live right now, and I kind of just got it off of a whim. Um, Meaning I read the title and I thought, oh, like this would be like a fun book to read, and boy was I wrong. This is in no way to give hate towards the author. It's just that this book brought out so many negative feelings in me. I usually never do when it comes to like these types of books. But this one really did it for me. Okay, so when I got this book, I thought the whole like I thought it was gonna be like a funny take on the whole like gay agenda because it has been used in like a lot of media as like a negative connotation, you know, like we're forcing it on people or whatever. And I thought it was gonna be a funny take and it was gonna be like positive and uplifting. So the gay agenda is basically like a list of what the main character Jay wants to do because he feels left out of the whole like high school experience when it comes to like dating and stuff. When I reached the first 100 pages, I kind of already came to the conclusion that I hated this book already, and I was so close to just like closing it and not continuing. But then um, I kind of started going down this rabbit hole where I was reading reviews about this book to see if any other people had the same feelings as I did. And yeah, a lot of people kind of shared the same thoughts. Yeah. So that's what kind of like pushed me into like finishing this book because once I saw because I did kind of spoil myself, not like it was kind of vague, but like had to read it for myself to see if it was true or not. Usually, I don't like when it comes to books like these, like young adult LGBT type of books. I usually don't hate them, but this one was like the first book that I did not enjoy. The bad kind of outweighed the good, and the good was like maybe this much. Like the entire time I'm reading this book, I'm just eye rolling at the decisions the characters are making, especially the main character. He's like a big issue, and yeah. I did write like a lot of talking points that I do want to get across. So if I'm like looking over here, that's what I'm reading off of. The first point I want to make: the story is very unrealistic in the sense that things happen by sheer coincidence. Usually, when I read like stories that take place like in like a school setting, I try to like put myself in their shoes. Like, okay, like, what is this something that I would have done in high school? Or if this is something that would happen in high school. And a lot of the time when I read this book, no, it's very unrealistic, and you can tell by the writing that this person thinks that they know what the average high school experience is, and it's it's not good. Okay. One thing I do want to note is that um, basically how the story starts is that Jay, the main character, um, is from like a small like conservative type of town, which I could relate to because I do come from like a small city where everyone is on the traditional side of it all. And like he brings up in the first like few chapters, like, oh, when he came out, people kind of associated him with like the stereotypes of like like being like the yes type of gay, and instead of just like taking him for who he is, which is like being like very much into statistics and stuff, like one of his like personalities in the book. Anyways, to get my point across, he's from like a small town, and he talks about how he wants to live in this big city because big cities tend to be like more open and progressive. He talks about wanting to live in Seattle because that's like gay central in like Washington, I guess. What do you know? In like the third chapter, he's suddenly moving to Seattle in like the gayest neighborhood ever. And it's like, wow, he was just talking about this and now he's doing it, which is weird. He moves, he leaves his best friend behind, and he starts his first day of school. Here's what happens on the first day of school. The first day, he meets the love interest, Albert, and falls in love with him immediately without even knowing him at all. And pretty much just goes based off his looks, calling him a VSB, which no one does that. I don't think I've ever met anyone who would use acronyms like that. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm just gonna have it because it's so uncomfortable. Like, it's gross in my opinion. One of the things that he does talk about is wanting to join like a gay straight alliance club, which then a QSA flyer just so happens to hit his face while he's in the lunchroom. He decides to attend it, which he does go to, I think on the same day. He meets his new best friend Max, who serves as like this like gay guide. A horrible one, by the way, which I'll get into later. Decides to tell this person that he just met for like 5 minutes about his gay agenda, which is like a personal thing that he has. Let me read you what he has on this agenda. Number 1, meet another gay kid in Seattle in like days. Number 2, go on a date with a boy at the Space Needle and hold hands within the first 90 minutes. 3, dance with a boy and have my first kiss slow dancing to Shawn Mendes while getting caught in a surprise Seattle downpour. 4, have a boyfriend, one who likes to wrap me up in his arms and let me be the little spoon and maybe smells like coffee from all the cafes he goes to. 5, fall in love with a boy but wait for him to say it first so I don't seem too desperate, and maybe he says it for the first time at Pike Place Market or in the first. 6, make out with Albert, because this is like kind of, because he kind of alters it as the days goes on, with tongue and run my fingers along that perfect jawline. See another besides my own IRL and do fun things with it. 8, lose my. 9, become part of a super queer, super tight family. But yeah, that's kind of like what he has at that point when he shows Max the whole like agenda thing. And then 5, elected as the VP and takes charge of the homecoming dance. All 5 things happen in one day. Before I move on, we need to talk about the characters and why a lot of them like suck. So we have Jay, who is the main character. His characteristics are so frustrating. It makes it so hard to root for him. The entire time I'm reading this book, I'm like eye rolling at everything that he does, and I feel like you can't even like make excuses for his behavior by saying that he's a dumb teenager who makes mistakes. We all make mistakes, but wow, does this guy take it to like a whole other level. A lot of the stuff that happens in the book could have been avoided if he just didn't lie. Because that's all the character does. He just lies and keeps certain facts from like people, which creates problems later on. He's also very overtly, in like every page he's always making some kind of innuendo, and it makes me as a reader like uncomfortable, because it's like I wasn't even like that in high school, and I don't think I've ever known anyone that was like that, which makes it's so stupid. I hate him. Like, I hate him. Then we have Lou, who is his oldest best friend that he leaves behind in his hometown. I was okay with the character, but she kind of, like, there was points in the book that, like, annoyed me a lot. So when the book starts, she has a boyfriend. And when we get to Jay's narration, he says that, like, she pretty much ditched him to be with her summer boyfriend, doing all these things, but then got mad at Jay when he did the same thing to her. But one thing I'll give her credit for is that he did lie about it, so it kind of like canceled out. Another like main plot point was the whole like hoedown thing that happens in their hometown. She pretty much was going to go with the summer boyfriend that she had, and then had the audacity to tell Jay that he could still make the costumes, but it would just be for her and for the guy to be wearing it, which is like, I'm sorry, like I don't know if it's just me. I probably wouldn't even do that. Like, how are you gonna like do this thing where we both like how are we gonna I don't even know. And then we have Max, who is like the worst best friend there is. He pretty much pushes Jay into like cheating on Albert with Tony, who is another character that we meet later on, using the excuse of like, oh, if he likes it, then he should have put a ring on it, which is like, these are high schoolers. I don't think I've ever heard it, of anyone saying that in the context of being a high school student. When a real friend would tell him like to communicate with Albert to see where they stand. This is kind of like a personal like nitpick, but this person says Lord and Taylor at every given moment. Like it was okay like in the first like few pages, but as you read on in the book, he says it like every like sentence, and it gets so annoying because it's like like you could literally play like a drinking game of like take a shot of every time this person says Lord and Taylor, and you would like die at the end. Or like you would die in the middle of it. Another thing about this character is that he introduces Jay to Tony, who is at least 20 years old, and pushes for them to like. One thing that I will know is that when I was reading the reviews, no one like seems to bring this up, which I thought was kind of weird, but I don't know. We have Reese, who is like the stereotypical mean theater gay who's just rude at any given moment. One thing I'll give him credit for is that he does reveal the gay agenda to Albert, which is like the climax of the story. And then we have previously mentioned Tony, who is a college student that Max introduces to Jay, and Jay pretty much uses him as like the whole like experience, I guess. So Tony is like a college student. Like at this point in time, he's already like in his second year of college, which makes him about maybe 20 years old. If he graduated 18, which a lot of people do, and if you're in your second year of college, you're like at least 20 years old. Jay is like 17 in the beginning of the book, and they're doing stuff together. He does turn 18 eventually, and that's when like the stuff happens. But like that's so weird. Like I don't know. I feel like if you're that deep in college, you have no business talking to high schoolers like that. I think that's strange. He's pretty much a gay version of a frat boy. He has like a board with like a bunch of tally marks on his dormitory door of all the guys that he brings in, and I think at the by the time that like he brings Jay into his dormitory, there's like 13 tally marks, I think. I don't know. I'm too lazy to go check the book, but the point is that he already has a bunch. Another thing about Jay is that he sees the red flags in Tony, but then like chooses to ignore it just because Tony is like hot. Like that pretty much outweighs the whole like red flags, and the entire time I'm thinking like, what are you doing? Like what are you doing? Tony is also just so like I hate him. Like I hate Jay, and then I hate Tony. Like, and I hate a lot of the characters. One character that I don't particularly hate, I just think he's kind of cringe, is Albert, who is like the main love interest, who's like the nerdy and silly guy. But he's also like super cringe because in this universe, there's like this Pokemon Go equivalent. He does this thing called like Digihips, which is what he does before he like catches like a monster or whatever. And I'm thinking like, okay, that's a unique detail, I guess, to have for this character. But yeah, he's like the least insufferable character in my opinion. So the whole premise of this story is that Jay wants to pretty much knock off every check that he has on the list, which is like the thing that he does throughout the book is make a bunch of lists because he's very statistical. One thing that I don't like about this book is that it pretty much pushes this narrative that you're a loser if you don't lose your by the end of high school, which is like kind of weird in my opinion, considering that this book, the way that the author describes this book is being like positive, which is like, I don't know. I feel like that really isn't, because that's pretty much the message of what happens and of what the book is kind of giving, and which he eventually does. Jay is so obsessed with wanting to lose his. It's like one of the items that he wants to check off on his list. It's literally on the back of the book. I read it like a few minutes ago. Once Albert finds out, Jay has like the audacity to be like, "Oh no, like this isn't like some kind of check. Like you're not like some kind of check mark that I want to like mark off." But then it is. Don't piss me off. I do want to reiterate the whole like Tony being like an adult and Jay still being a minor in the like first half of the book. This book kind of also normalizes like adult and minor relationships, even though there's like a 2 to 3 like a year age gap. Jay is still a minor in the book in the first half of the book, and Tony is like already like knee deep in college at this point. Which again, I feel like as a college student, you don't really have any business talking to high schoolers. That's just a personal opinion, I think, but it's not just with Tony and Jay. Um, the Lou, the summer boyfriend that Lou is with, his name is Chip, and when we're introduced to him, he's already in community college, and Lou like dates him the summer before their senior year. So like minor. Like why are we making this normal? Like, she's not even a senior yet, and she's in a relationship with this guy who's already in community college. A writing issue that I had with this book is that the list is reiterated in almost every chapter, and that's because when it comes to the agenda, he's changing a lot of things. Like he's crossing off stuff to fit within like with like who he wants to do a certain thing with. So like you have like the romantic aspect where it's like, oh, I want to do this with Albert. I want to do all these like lovey-dovey things. But then when it comes to like the stuff, he's like, oh, I want to do this with Tony because he has more experience and he's so hot. And even though all these red flags are like waving in front of my face, I'm just gonna ignore that. And that pisses me off. When it comes to the ending of this book, everyone kind of forgave Jay so quickly, um, especially with like some of the storylines, like with Lou and Jay's like best friend turmoil storyline. It's kind of resolved in a way that doesn't make sense. They barely talk throughout the book, and then they fight, and then it's resolved because they didn't talk, and it makes me think like, what's the point of having the storyline if it's just popping up in like random places, you know? But like back to the whole like thing of like everyone forgiving him kind of too quickly. A lot of the problems are kind of caused by Jay, and it almost feels like he kind of brings it upon himself. Like he lies all the time. He withholds facts from like his friends and people. And when it gets pushed back in his face, he doesn't take responsibility for it. His whole mindset is that he's the victim and that it's someone else's fault. Like when Reese reveals the agenda to Albert, Jake gets so mad about it. He's like, that's none of your business, or something like that. And he kind of blames him for his and Albert's like falling out when it's like it's not even his fault. Like Reese and Albert, they're like friends because they have like a shared interest in the whole like Pokemon Go copycat. He also gets mad at Max for revealing the agenda to Tony, which is why like he even like pursues this whole like relationship with him. And he gets so mad about it. And it's just like, that's kind of on you though, because you kind of told him on the first day of school, minutes after meeting him, you know? Anyways, my overall thoughts on this book is that it could have been better if the plot was different. Like, instead of Jay moving to Seattle to feel more comfortable with his sexuality, the plot could have been him getting his country, close minded hometown to see him in a better light. Hence, his gay agenda could have had some meaning rather than just being a list of things he wants to check off for the sake of not wanting to feel left out by his straight peers. I feel like the only way this book could have been like positive is if Jay never had with someone who only saw him as a body and not a person, which is what happens. But another thing that I do want to bring up is that Jay is also very like overtly sexual and has to bring up his feelings in like every page whenever Albert or Tony does something. Like again, like there's innuendos in like every like damn page. And it's like it's weird. Like I don't like that. Yeah, like it's just a bunch of gross commentary, stuff that probably should have been left out. The side plot of him and Lou, it's kind of it's kind of hard to keep up with that storyline because she's not even in the same city as Jay. Like she just kind of pops up randomly when the plot needs to create some sort of conflict between them. One of the plot lines is that Jay lies about homecoming being on a different date when it was the same night as the homecoming. I mean, as the hoedown. Like a normal person would be like, "Oh shoot, like they're happening on the same day." It's kind of hard to pick one, and obviously she would have told him. Like a good friend would probably tell him, like, "Oh, go to your thing," like whatever. I don't know, but he doesn't. He lies about it. Like this entire conflict could have been preventable if he had just told her the truth and like told her that he wanted to go to that instead. And if anything, like he could have just invited her to go to the homecoming too, but I don't know. Because the thing is, like, homecoming dances are not like grade restricted, kind of like prom being open to like seniors only and then like sometimes juniors. But homecoming is just like it's just a dance. Like, am I like at least that's how I feel about it. It's just a dance. You could go like in any year, and it's not really that big of a deal, in my opinion. Another thing about this book is that it tries to squash down on stereotypes, but the characters are based on stereotypes. Like Jay being the overtly gay, Reese being the mean theater gay, Max being the femme gay, Tony being like the grinder as gay. Like another issue with the book is that Jay doesn't actually fall in love. Like when he first meets Albert, he's only into him because he's conventionally like attractive to him. And then as they got to spend more time together, it felt like the purpose of them being together was to check off items on his list, which is exactly what it is. Another thing is that he pursues Tony as like some sort of like sexual outlet. Like there's no romance at all. Like it's purely like he's purely with him for the sake of wanting to like lose his. But the thing about that is that he knows that Tony is using him for that exact thing, but then gets upset when it's confirmed because at like towards the end of the book, it's revealed that Tony has a boyfriend, like a long distance boyfriend, and Jay gets upset at that. He's like, "Oh, like you're just using me because I'm here nearby," and it's like, yeah, like we knew this, we all knew this, and you're for some reason you're upset just because you found out that he has a boyfriend. He pisses me off. One of the running plot lines is the homecoming dance and how they have to come up with a theme. Eventually, they come up with a theme, and it's the theme is like love in hindsight. Throughout the book, they're trying to figure out like costume ideas and stuff like that. But then at the end of the book, when everyone is mad at him, he's like, "Okay, I need to use this costume as like some sort of apology." So they decide to go as a giant butt. I'm not making this up. That's literally what happens. Him and Max, it's like a partner costume, and they just this was used as an apology to Albert and Reese, by the way, and Lou when he goes back to his hometown to apologize to her in person. This book pisses me off, in case you couldn't tell. Like, it really does. That was the big apology. And it worked. When he does the whole apology thing to Albert, he like forgives him and they end up together, or at least it's kind of hinted that they're like together, and it's like because like what do you mean that this was like this like anyways, I did not like this book at all. I would give it a 0, but you can't do that on Goodreads, so I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 5. I feel like after reading this book, it kind of affected the way that I read like young adult, like LGBT themed books, because I just finished reading What If It's Us by Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli. And I think like in the middle of the book, I was like starting to get like those negative feelings where it's like, wow, that was kind of dumb, or wow, this character is kind of an. I feel like I'm kind of scared to read back my old books that I really liked after reading this, and I'm scared that I'm gonna hate them too, even though they're not as ridiculous as what happens here. But I don't know, it makes me afraid, and it makes me afraid to even like read like LGBT books because I feel like I'm gonna hate it. Because like this book brought a lot of negative emotions out of me, and that's a first because usually when I'm reading a book like this, I cry at like the end, and yeah, this book, I was just frustrated. I honestly would not recommend this book unless you like cheesy storylines, weird jokes, stuff like that. By all means. However, if you don't like that, then you for sure should not read this book because I did not like it, and I feel like you wouldn't like it either. But that's just a personal opinion. I do recommend like reading the reviews on Goodreads because a lot of people do go in depth into like why they did not particularly like this book. Would I read from this author again? Probably, only because I do have this book. I didn't know that they also wrote this, and I haven't read it yet, but um, I'm willing to give this author a second chance. Eventually, I'll read it at some point. Anyways, that's the end of this oversight. If you want to like suggest some books for me to read, like go ahead and tell me. I'll see if I can find them in the stores here that in my city, and yeah. Anyways, don't forget to smile.